Good afternoon and a very warm welcome once again to our participants across EPS platform, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. This edition of Business and Banking Dialogue. My name is KK and I'm the moderator for today's session with Mr. A P Hota on decoding the DNA of neo-banking. So our topic of today is on neo-banking. Mr. Hota was the ex-chairman of NPCI, and under his management, NPCI had revolutionized payment systems and infrastructure significantly. UPI and IMPS, two notable payment systems, are currently trailblazers in the current payment systems of the country. Look at the statistics. Despite the COVID onslaught in March, with virtually everything coming to a standstill, UPI recorded a staggering 1.25 billion transaction, while IMPS recorded 217 million transactions. This was a little less than the month of February, but I wanted to bring March because of the standstill that we had, and despite that standstill, the numbers are really staggering. RBI predicts 100% growth in the coming months. Thank you, Mr. Hota. Those are staggering numbers, absolutely staggering numbers. Did you ever dream of such numbers when you initiated these programs in the first time?
Oh, yes. We had very much in our mind such a volume. It was by design, it was on a citizen scale. In fact, one of our board member who might be also listening to the show, he always used to really talk about a billion volume. In fact, the vision is how can we achieve a billion volume and how long would it take? A day. Now a billion plus is in a month. In fact, for the month of May, the volume has already means it has recovered back to the original volume of around 1.25 billion, and similarly the growth trend is quite visible. And also, I would like to correct at this point of time because while introducing me, you introduced a chairman. I was MD and CEO of NPCI. Just for clarification.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
It was very much in our mind because in NPCI we were very clear that the institution is designed to see that each and every Indian is touched by one or other electronic payment products. Every Indian, including the children. So they should be touched in some way or other. And towards the dream, the work is on. The new management under Dilli Pasbe, they are all taking lead, and you can see the growth from strength to strength. Yes, it was very much in our dream.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure. I wish NPCI a lot more luck, and and that we kind of continue with the things that we're already doing, which is significantly very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're someone who has been closely following fintech trends, you must have heard of neobanks. For those who are hearing it for the first time, no worries. Let's get to know from Mr. Hota what's neobank and how are they different from commercial banks, small finance banks, and payments bank. These are the last two are the two banks that lately has come into being. So we want to kind of look at what are these neobanks. Sir, what is neobanks and how are they different from other banks?
If you try to find whether there is anything called neobank in Indian really regulatory literature, you will not find anywhere the mention neobank, because as per Banking Regulation Act, the word bank can be used very sparingly. Only those institutions who are engaged in the banking business can only use the word bank. So what we popularly refer to as neobank these days, you would find their name is actually not bank. Nowhere you would find bank. Dash technologies or dash financial services. Like this you would really find. You might find in the tagline the word banking, maybe at some point of time when it becomes an issue let it not arise, like on some customer grievance or some big fraud. That point of time, even that may come under question. Why this institution referred to as neobank use the word banking even in the tagline? So it is not. It is legally. I would not say permitted. It is silent about that. And also a few institutions, so-called, or you can say referred to as neobank, you will find from their website the word bank is there, a couple of. So that may be also come under question. So as there is no such category as a neobank, that this can be called, described as a neobank, because they are not, they have not got the license for banking services. Banking service is highly leveraged. Banks are highly leveraged institutions, and they are highly regulated. There are categories of banks: commercial bank, cooperative bank, and recently created payment bank. You can say the small finance bank. And those non-bank institutions who are doing banking service, they are also called non-banking financial institutions. So there also they are not using the word bank. So, but banking service, which used to be, which started as acceptance of deposits with a view to lending, the usual definition, that has become so complex that it is not just like accepting deposit and building, obviously, deposit products and lending and few lending products. It is not just deposit products and lending products and asset transformation. Whole range of other services have also come around that, and such as payment services like transfer of money, then financial advisory, the foreign exchange facilitation, debit card, credit card, and while discharging the credit functions, lending functions, or giving loans, so many products and services built around the lending have also come into play. All of them require huge amount of services. The operational work in the banking institution has become so complex that without the support of parties, external parties, it is very difficult to discharge. Along with the social objectives of the banks, when the inclusion objectives came, the question of how to reach provide the last mile connectivity, how to include maximum number of possible into the banking system, that responsibility was entrusted to the banking system by the regulator and the government machinery. Then with the frauds and financial crimes increasing, KYC, AML, CFT, whole kind of regulations came into place. With the complexity of the international trade, different kind of trade-related services came into play. Apart from financial, assets, non-financial assets or have also started to needs to be provided, like bank guarantee and other things, the collateralized lending, credit cards. So complexities have grown, and without the support of external parties, very difficult to do. So many of these players, they have been coming up and supporting the banking institutions in the form of core banking solution, in the form of then building the solutions around the basic service of deposits and lending and ancillary services, KYC, AML. So these services have come up, and even the business correspondence for inclusion purpose. It is only of late that some high-tech, extreme technology or high-tech companies, fintech firms come who are specializing in providing the banking services. We call them as neobanks. So this is in view that the growth path of neobank. So you can ask in one way, you did not call the core banking solution providers are neobanks. You did not call the business correspondents who came in the first decade. You did not call them neobanks. You did not call neobanks people who came to support in payment services or lending services, analytics services, data science services. Why are you calling them? Why these new categories have come? That question may also come. We'll discuss as we go along.
Yeah, sure, sir. So I have one brief answer. You did talk about neobanks, and that's pretty clear. So do they have kind of a physical presence?
Very little, because it depends on who all you'd like to really include them as under neobank. As it is, as I said, it is these loose terminology called neobank. Let us not talk about the neobank concept in Europe or continental Europe or UK or Singapore or US. If we really get focused on India, I suppose terminology is so fluid. It depends on how we define. So if you say, can the really corporate BCs who are providing services all around throughout the in the remote parts, can they be called neobanks? Possibly, I do not have straight answer. Of course, they are already come under business correspondence, and they are quite happy about it. But if you just say that extreme technology and kind of institutions would only be referred to as neobanks, then they do not need physical presence. But obviously, for their enterprise to function, they need a physical presence, at least one head office and or some office space where their top leadership team would be there. They need some space for locating their systems. If they are using the data space web on the web, they don't need it. So you can say physical space is not required.
Okay, great. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are hearing it for the first time, as Mr. Hota explained, neobanks are completely digital banks that have perhaps no physical presence. They reach out to customers via mobile apps and web platforms and other digital forms. So that sets the perspective for our discussion, and I think we have brought to speed everyone in this program as to what is neobank. So let's move further, sir, into this. So we know that different types of banks cater to a section of the market. We know like cooperative bank cater to a section of the market, etc. So what is a market segment of neobanks?
I would say, first of all, what are the challenges that the banks are facing and where they are currently working on supporting the banks as partners? So account opening. This is a very, very old traditional method. But for account opening, now obviously the accounts would have to be sourced. KYC would have to be carried out. Obviously, the account would have to be opened by the banks only. The final approval for KYC has to come from the bank. But the KYC process now even the video KYC has been processed, has been permitted by RBI. A lot of work is involved. Banks have outsourced some of the work, not the entire work. At some places, even their outsourced agencies sit in the branch and they do the processing, but final approval is given by the bank. This is one service, account opening.
Yeah.
But the new banks can go beyond account opening. It means this is one type of new banking service where the new bank is tagged with a particular bank, where they as outsourced agency they can be. Another model is the new bank would completely digital service, whereby they will digital account opening would be done. Only at the last stage, bank will get the approval, or else all backend processing, including once the bank approves loading on the core banking database, done by the outsourced agency. Then another is this one model. Another model is obviously the customer of any bank can come and open an account, a shadow account with the new bank, and that shadow account can be linked with one of the bank account in the existing bank. So the servicing layer, customer facing layer is taken away from the bank, and it remains with the new bank institution. So they really do the servicing of the customer, and they create a shadow bank account. And in the shadow bank account can have linkage with 4 or 5 bank accounts also. If the person or the MSME or any kind of institution has many accounts, many bank accounts, all those bank accounts linked with the shadow bank account. It may so happen that a part of the fund balance is taken out from the main bank account and remains with the shadow account. Like in China, it is happening in a big way, really, in this kind of shadow account. So in the shadow account, the account balance is pulled out, kept in the shadow account. From the shadow account, you do the transactions, and shadow account, you can say it is some form of prepaid account. And that's from the shadow account, really, you have a credit card, debit card, and very customized, well-tailored, suiting the customer needs. Special type of credit card and debit cards are generated. Special type of products or savings product or investment products are built. That is also possible. Then really going to the lending side, the same way, analyzing the lending requirement of the customer is worked out, and the proposal is generated, and the advisory is given to the customer. After all, this new banking cannot really, even if it is white leveled or bank tagged new bank, it cannot really underwrite loan on its own account, because the loan undertaking is also an activity. Either it has to be a bank or NBFCs. New bank cannot do on its own right. Even if it would like to issue a credit card, it can issue only as a NBFC. That also requires NBFC license. So at best, they can serve customer-facing aspects of these activities can be done. So far as the payments part, the transactional needs, be it the rupee account or the forex, the need for the forex or bill collection, the invoice generation for the MSME, even the tax compliance, those activities can also be done by the neobanks, and many neobanks have come out with many other activities. Thankfully, now really RBI has now categorized 2 categories of fintech institutions will go out of this framework. One is the payment aggregators, those who are in payment aggregation business for e-commerce merchants. They will go out as the payment aggregators. Now, those who are supporting in lending activity and those who would like to really work on, they will go as account aggregators. So account aggregators go away, payment aggregators go away. The residual fintech institutions providing services to the banks, be it on account opening or different kind of payment processing for individuals or forex services, the AML services to the banks, CFT services, export-oriented different trade documentation processes. They remain another group of fintechs, and they will have the neobanking. Who knows all these institutions and can come back together and say that you recognize us as in the broad group of neobanks. So it is in the evaluation, I would say. It is in the evolutionary phase. So who all would be there and what would they do? Possibly for some more time, they will keep on doing multifarious things because for account aggregator and payment aggregator to the models to really come up and take out the bunch of institutions, it would really take some time. Yes.
Right, sir. Thank you. So we are saying that the neobanks are an intermediary, perhaps, between they hold all the banks customers, all the banks account, and they are basically like a front ending of these banks for the customer. And so I had one doubt on that, sir. Who holds the customer data and financial data and the KYC data? Banks or the fintech companies?
Obviously, the banks, they cannot really, because financial data is very, very sensitive. Without the customer's consent, they cannot have access to the data also. And as it is,
okay, sir.
They are the customers, obviously, while serving the customer, whoever is serving, he is really servicing the customer. Who owns the customer? Obviously, the banks own this is also quite a debatable issue, but loosely speaking, you can say bank owns the customer for the purpose of ABCD, that custody of the account. Obviously the responsibility to manage the funds rests with the bank, unless the customer has specifically given a consent to a part of the fund being managed in a specific way by the financial advisory services of this particular service, the neobanks. Obviously to the bank.
Thank you, sir. So while I request yes, right, sir. I think it's pretty clear. I'm sure all the participants have understood what is a neobank by now, and how are they different from the regular commercial bank and other banks that we have in here. So while I asked my back office to put up a slide to show which are those banks which are called as neobanks, I would take the opportunity to tell all the participants that please put in your questions, right? And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions coming today. So please put in your questions early. We'll also give an opportunity to kind of talk to you directly. So can I have the slide, please, so that we are. So ladies and gentlemen, these are the kind of names that are there. And he said if you remember, Mr. Hota said that many of them don't put bank as their name, and you'll find that quite a few of them have not. They don't mention that as a name, but these are the kind of banks that are operating globally for and acting as and called as what we call now as neobanks. Thank you very much, Tamesh, for this slide. And so just to take from there, we saw those names were all names which are perhaps popular in the Western side. So any of the neobanks are present in India, sir?
This slide that you had put up, in fact, possibilities. That is a compilation of the neobanks in other markets, and as you said rightly, and in the three categories: startups and bank-owned neobanks and non-bank-owned neobanks. it is only a few bank-owned neobanks that they have used the word bank. I'm not sure really in those countries whether there is such a regulation as in India, like the word bank cannot be used. So one or two are there. Possibly it is not being like Q bank and other things. Possibly the word there such provision is not there, so they are usually using the word bank. In India, I have not seen any. First of all, I have not seen any name of any institution with bank tag and not a bank. The so-called some of the names which is floating around and some services we see in the newspaper. I have not availed, to be honest. I have not availed any service from any new bank so far. Not that I would not at any point of time. I may also. The Neo Bank, Jello Bank, Razor Pay ads, 27 Insta Pay, Insta Pay or something. A whole lot of really institutions are there who are used or open financial, and quite a few. And many of them are based in Bangalore, really IT hub of the country. And they have been offering, as I see from their website and literature, I have really only a couple of them really of the whole lot of 15, 20 list that I see. I have interacted. Others I have not interacted, but I've seen their websites. Well, they seem to be really doing well and supporting many banks. Some are really bank tagged, some are really open access. The customer of any bank can go and join, and at the back end they have the arrangement with the concerned banks. So some are tagged to a particular bank, like Neo Bank with one bank, then the next bank with another bank, and some are really free. So that is how they are there, and it is an evolving process, and they seem to be providing splendid service. And many of them are focused on payments to start with. But I feel that now that payment aggregator license regime, regulatory regime has come, they would really position themselves as payment aggregators. Although they have also the subsidiaries which do lending business, means support in lending business. They might also really apply for account aggregator services, but many are there. The list is quite wide. I suppose it is available on the website. Their websites are also really pretty good, and they have very interesting videos. Videos also show excellent service. I'm impressed with the range of services they are offering. And next to payments, I suppose they have the MSME is their focus. How they can full range of services they can provide to MSME, including even GST filing and tax filing. The all kind of government filing work also they are really take up, so that the MSME get one-stop service, financial service from these institutions. So that way it is a really very good thing, and I see great prospect in the when the government is focusing so much attention on MSME.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So I think it is catching up, and from what I understand, they have a CAGR of almost 46% abroad in the US, and it is by 2025 they are expected to touch something like US dollar $350 million, so which is quite a lot, and I think they will grow. I'm sure India also will
absolutely
catch up. So before
the kind of attention they have caught from the investors is pretty interesting, and there have been huge investment on new banks during the last two years. Yes.
Excellent, sir. Thank you. So on that note, I also want to kind of tell you that we have crossed a milestone today from a viewership point. We have crossed 500 participants right now. Over 500 participants are right now watching you across different channels, including Facebook,
Great to know that.
YouTube, and Twitter. Yeah, thank you, sir. That's testimony for your knowledge, and people are wanting to hear about you. So, what are the factors that drive the growth of neobanks?
You can see that is where really the caption of the topic, quite a jazzy topic that you have given for the show, decoding the DNA of neobanking. Okay, possibly in the COVID area when there is so much of focus on, microscopic study or electronic microscope study of coronavirus. So you want to study really neobanking. Possibly it gives not only makes the subject quite jazzy and interesting, but at the same time, really it also really quite topical. That possibly I do not know whether you and the organizing team had in mind, because the way in a DNA, the partnership really goes and really like a ladder it moves, unless two parties, two kind of really molecules are of certain categories, they go really in deep partnership, it cannot really sustain. And what kind of really they must bond well to create that genes and other things. Similarly, this possibly in neobanking, what is there in the DNA is obviously extreme technology. How technology can be taken to a next level in providing, using artificial intelligence, can be used in providing the customer in knowing what customer needs very intuitively. One can know. So first characteristics is extreme technology. The second is customer centricity. All these years, possibly the banks had got product focused, and it was they would launch a product. If it fits, people will go. If it does not fit, they will not go. The savings products, very few. The same way the lending products, very few. How can deposit products or lending products rightly fit into the requirement of the customer? How can so determining the right fit and right fit for a particular customer instead of a large group of customers? How can they be served in a very personal way? So customer centricity. The customer must get the service just in time they need it. That is really customer centricity focus is second. Extreme engineering, customer centricity. Then obviously innovation spirit, innovation in the culture. The organization structure-wise lean and thin so that it is cost efficient. Possibly I will take these three are the
factors,
core features of these neobanks. And this is on because these features are not available in the traditional banks. Of course, banks are catching up in at a speed, unbelievable speed. So possibly till that, but at the same time, banks have got ever-changing needs. Who they did not predict COVID. It came as a really a point, and really many of these activities have gone topsy-turvy. Now the top management, the whole operational machinery is at stress. Apart from really handling the stress itself of obviously NPA stress. So these to these neobank institutions come handy for the banks to make their work simpler. That way, really, that is the part of their characteristics, that extreme technology and this innovation and customer centricity can be leveraged by the banks for their part and to achieve their goals. It is no longer possible for banks to really do everything in-house. They have to really get the service.
I think we lost
So, in the banks, so it is like a city state. They can bring all the banks together and all the new banks together, ask the banks, what do you want? What all your activities you are not in a position to train. So these are the people available. You tell them, they will really come up with solutions. They will come up with such a solution which will work for all of you. And they get focused on that, you get focused on that. Means the whole thing is brokered by the central bank because it is possible to do that. The complexity of administrating such a small country is feasible. In a large country like ours, it is very difficult to really bring all the parties together. If you really, because the needs of all the banks are also so very different. One gigantic bank, another small bank, and another bank really thinking of killing the other gigantic banks. So that way, really, it is quite complex. Indian situation is quite complex. So that has not been possible, but sooner or later, everybody would realize working together makes sense. Let the new banks come and they also thrive. Let them come as good supporting structure for the banks. That is how it would be possible.
Thank you, sir. I think you answered my query. Before I take a query from one of our participants, so I think I want to actually ask you, are they challenging the traditional? But you said very clearly they should be working together. So that's what it is. So neobanks, as whatever the names they are called, they actually should be working together with the traditional banks, and that in this 1+1 gives a good flavor. It helps both the banks and the fintech company and the customers also. So before I further go into our discussion, sir, yeah. We are having a break from the network break. Please be patient, please. Sorry, sir. Okay. Sure. So let me without delaying further, can I ask Mr. Harish, I think Mr. Prabhu, to kind of unmute and ask a question. Please introduce yourself, Prabhu.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Hota.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prabhu. Yes.
It's a privilege to always hear you anyway. I'll come to the question. You've partly answered the question, which I wanted to ask, but nevertheless, as I understand it, neobanks are extended arms of banks, right? And they exist only due to the fact that normal banks want to outsource some of their product offering processes to reduce fixed manpower costs, just like, big pharma has outsourced clinical trials or contract manufacturing, right? But they are extended partners. But my question is, from a reputational / operational risk perspective, wouldn't it be logical for banks to provide all services themselves with the appropriate technologies in a cost-effective manner? The most important being cost-effective manner, and and if they do so, neobanks might be at a risk, right? Lastly, from a Basel III perspective, wouldn't the banks have to allocate more capital to provide for the increased operational risk because you're dependent on a vendor for your core processes?
They will have to weigh and balance whether it will be proper to really do in-house or outsource. If they can do in-house, there is nothing like it. There are some large private banks here in India also. Many activities they are doing in-house, and they have not outsourced it. Though most of the banks, even public sector banks, have outsourced, but they are doing in-house because they find it appropriate, and they have been able to make it cost efficient by going for a particular model of doing in-house. If that can be done, fine. But the complexity of banking is growing so much. The work is tremendous. If they would like to do, possibly they would get deflected from the core work. That is why they do it. Obviously, if they outsource, operational risk goes, and obviously they will have to provide for whatever the increase in the capital. They will have to be ready for that. They will have to manage the risk operation, and there are certain activities RBI itself has indicated you cannot outsource. If you outsource also, you will have to take full responsibility. And so many of the work is done, base work is done by the outsourced agency. And it is only the last part like that the banks themselves do it. The data entry operations, in most of the work now, in account opening, either it is done straight through. If the customer is doing the account opening online, really customer himself is doing the data entry, and it comes and they do the validation also really online. So the processes have to be there so that there is minimum of operational work. And to do the minimum of operational work, like, you give the PAN number, customer gives the PAN number needs to be validated. CBDT has given the API by which you can do the validation. But if the bank does not have a solution, they will have to develop a solution for that. But there is another vendor who is saying, why are you doing that? I can do the validation of PAN, I can PAN, TAN, GST, driving license, UIDI, whole range of activities. I can do the validation on your behalf. You just trust me, I can sit in your office and I'll give you the solution, whole range of solution. It can be done straight through my process. But you will have to give me a pie of the transaction fee, as a transaction fee. So bank would have to take a call whether it is worth doing in-house, doing all the data entry work, or they will really give it to the outsourced agency. The same in the case of, suppose, the loan processing. The loan management solutions in the bank, which sits outside the core banking solution, but closely integrated with the core banking solution. It has its own independent modules. That modules also require a lot of checks. Now, from MCA, you can really check the directors of the company's profile. You can see the court cases, whether the court cases are there against the company, the company's account, account statement for last 5 years. You can check, although for certain that accounting statements also many times depends on the integrity and ethics of the accounting. But let us presume that it is fully, they have done it in a fully ethical manner. That is also available, compiled, studied, analyzed, and presented to the management for their work. Obviously, these agencies cannot do the underwriting. Underwriting has to be done by the bank itself, but that work is also done. The AML and KYC related work, upload on the eKYC portal, CERSAI portal, doing many kinds of check. The FIU, this financial intelligence unit reporting, and you would have seen the last 2 years how many banks have been penalized for how many crores for KYC violation. Now the FIU has also started penalizing.
Yes,
of course, monetary penalty has not come as yet, but the censors have already come and really strictures have come. Very soon they would also start penalizing. So all the regulators would start penalizing. So the banks would have to really take a weigh and balance. So making penalties good, or this is that. Some specialized institutions have already come handy for the banks, like valuation of securities, for really stock checking of the different manufacturers, go and stock checking once in 6 months or once a year. There are specialist agency network have come. That work has become easy for the banks. So bank staff can really rely on that, but they would have to do also the periodical checks. It is just only their statement, but taking them to task as per that professional body's norms, it is expected that they will do an ethical work, but ultimately it lies with the bank. So responsibility lies with the bank, but if you do the operational work at the same time, take all responsibilities, the work would be tremendous. So better to outsource and stay lean and thin and check in the value chain in which aspect banks are best at. And banks should remain in the best element of the value chain, and others can be possibly, if it is outsourced and they are kept under control, it is good, but obviously you will have to provide, manage the risk. Operational risk is there. Process really, then only it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you, sir.
Mr. Prabhu. Thank you, sir. That was excellent. Very well answered. I think Mr. Kannan also had a question, but I think more or less you have covered all these aspects and as to why it is different. So there is a saying that you can buy technology, but not buy culture. Okay. So because you said that these neobanks, as they're called, are extreme engineering, do you think that neobanks have a different operating culture?
Yes, the operating culture is of course they use agile technology, the agility of operations, innovative spirit. They would like to. They can go to market. They can help banks to go to market as quickly as possible, or they themselves can go to market very quickly. That is their culture. Banks can really buy technology and software, but delivering it with as much agility as the new banks would be difficult. Because banks, the customers still trust banks.
Yes.
And they are the really, they are custodian of customers' money. And customers also, expectations of the bank is huge.
Yes.
So they will have to be extremely careful. So the new banks, even if it is delegated to the new bank in some way, possibly taking that, building that trust would take some time. So it is best is really the banks start building the armory of technology in-house and try to integrate as quickly as possible. And if the banks can be as agile and as techno-savvy as neobanks, in fact, neobanks' future is also at threat. So the only way they can survive, that is why I was hinting at, is collaboration. Collaboration at a forum where banks and the neobanks talk to each other. It can be brokered by RBI or the banking, IBA or some associations has to really broker that. Yes. Or else neobank, there will be a little chaos till regulations comes into play. one or two ugly incidents would take the all initiatives, bring all initiatives of the neobanks into a little question mark. That is the risk that this neobank group of neobanks run. That is my hunch. I do not know really to what extent
True, sir.
it could be correct, but that is my hunch.
Yeah, true, sir. I think you're right about it. And let's see how this goes, because obviously they are here to stay. So let's try and take a question directly. This time, let's take a question directly from YouTube. We have a user wanting to ask a question directly to you. Could you please introduce yourself and ask the question? Ayushi, please ask the question. Okay, I think there seems to be some technical difficulty. So let me ask a couple of questions which are come for the participants. So the question is, sir, what's the difference between neobank on one hand, the business correspondent, and open banking? And that's the kind of question there. What one or two examples, if you can give, that's good enough, sir.
The business correspondent, there are a good number of business correspondents in India right now.
Yeah.
What used to be business correspondent, one such big business correspondent which used to be there is now a small finance bank and aiming to be, is a payment bank aiming to be a small finance bank. The Fino is there.
Okay.
Then plus there are Eco is still really business correspondent. And there are business correspondents operating in remote areas. Quite a large body of business correspondents. They have done a tremendous work during this COVID period in dispersing cash, and they are primarily focused on last mile connectivity of the banking system and primarily focused on financial inclusion. They also do use technology. The technology are that technology may not be jazzy, but also very crucial for the country.
Yes.
Like micro ATMs or micro ATMs or for Aadhaar based thumb impression kind of thing, and debit card. Even they really support in mobile banking. So that is the kind of activities. They also really support the banks in collection. There's many of the microfinance companies are also playing the role of business correspondents. Even the payment banks are also acting as business correspondents for the banks they have tied up with. The business correspondents are many. Then really you come to the neobanks. In the neobanks are the banks which are really they started with payment banks and then became quite big, and they don't call themselves as neobank because they thought that the best way is to really get payment focused. Like you can say, one such things can be phone pay is highly payment focused. There are institutions specializing on the debit card and credit card processing with switching and payment gateways. There are collection agents. There are really companies which are really doing just on bill aggregation business, and as I indicated earlier, they are going away as payment aggregators, supporting the e-commerce and also the utility bill payment infrastructure and whole lot of payments. Not only the utilities. Now RBI has opened up BBPS for the wide area of bill collection activities, like even the school fees, college fees, and other activities. Then the third thing you really third aspect. So what is that?
Open banking. Open banking.
In the open banking, primarily it is open banking methodology. In the open banking, the banks how can the banks open up their database, which many of the sectors were telling the banks are custodian of large volume of data, which they are hoarding and which they are hiding and not allowing anybody to use also, and they themselves also do not use. That is the way really they were, they presented themselves. I don't subscribe to this viewpoint, but that is the way the accusations that they were giving, and initially that was true, but now if the customer, after all, owner of the data about the customer's information is the customer himself. If the customer gives a consent, why not that data be used meaningfully in additional services? So that requires for institutions outside the bank to access the banking data. That can be done only when there is a secured way of accessing, and that secured API methodology. So, and make it available to the agencies which the customer himself would like it to be made available. That is the really a core principle of really account aggregation also. Any financial data would be made available by the information service provider to the information service user through the mechanism of account aggregator as a pass-through institution. So as a pass-through institutions, they would make the information available, and that is possible by API, and API are by nature open. So if industry-wide, the entire banking industry goes for common APIs, then it becomes a API banking for the industry as a whole, which a few countries have adopted as a very conscious policy decision, like UK, Singapore, Australia. Quite a few countries, they have gone as a countrywide. They would standardize the APIs so that, but now in India so far, the APIs are developed. Bank A takes picks of an agency, you do APIs for these activities. So the solution provider will build the APIs. Another bank will say, I want to open up only this area. You build 30 APIs. So some has built 400, 300, 30, 20, 37. So these APIs may be indifferent. Sometimes that is why really when NPCI also developed UPI under the API infrastructure with set of APIs, with a stack of APIs, the banks had to really slightly adjust their API machinery to really observe that, because we wanted to standardize the API. And to a great extent, almost 95% it is standardized. In some banks, they do a little bit of changes here and there, but it is standardized. So if everybody operates on a standardized, at industry level, you can say the industry has gone for a API banking culture. So at an industry level, acceptance of API as the standard way of sharing information in a secured manner, where the customer himself is the owner of the data. So how to build the security around the whole framework? A good deal of activities would have to be there. The regulator have also to get involved, and a lot of work to do. But that is the way really the whole means at the industry level, API bank, open banking would operate. But the way now, if you say, are you open? Have you got the API? Bank will say, yes, I have got 300 APIs. I have got it developed. Because creating the APIs, because technology engines are available. Developing the API is not very difficult. They can do that. But to get it accepted for final consumption, it requires a lot of coordination.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So before I kind of end the session, I have one question to ask you, and I think it'll be useful to the participants. I'm sure participants out here could be looking at setting up their own neobanking organization. I know a group out here who are brainstorming on that. So on their behalf, can I ask a question, sir? What is your actionable advice? What is your actionable advice to the entrepreneurs who are heralding the new banking regulation in India, and what should the future roadmap be?
I suppose great opportunity ahead.
Okay.
But cooperate with the fellow new banks, and
Okay.
that would really help. Have dialogue, frequent dialogue with the regulators. Let them know the value addition you are giving. Let the industry keep knowing what the value additions you are capable of doing. Many times the banks, I feel they keep on exploring with the solutions with the solution provider they are most comfortable with. They may not be knowing that there are many things available and it can be offered, and try to white level as much as possible. If you get tagged on with a particular bank, should the relationship go sour, you are nowhere. So cooperation with fellow neobanks, dialogue with the regulator on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
Obviously, the banks need many services. So if you have the dialogue with banks and very deep dialogue, after all, you are doing extreme engineering. So extreme dialogue, do extreme dialogue with the banks. They need your service. Their requirements are huge. Even the best of banks have the challenges of complying with their doing a complete compliance with their own rules and regulations, and also the regulatory compliance. Prospect is a great opportunity ahead, but white level and be at the industry level, try to do many things. That's all my advice.
Thank you, sir. I think that's pearls of wisdom for all those who are trying to set up a neobank. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the session. We have already passed the time. So I'm sorry I'm not able to take any more questions. We respect the guests' time. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have heard from Mr. Hota is about the neobank, which is all about extreme engineering, customer centricity, and innovation. I think these are three pillars that make a neobank. And I think there is tremendous opportunity, like he said, for neobanks to be set up in India. And I'm sure participants who are from the fintech industry would want to kind of think about it, talk to your colleagues, form a team, brainstorm. And I think there is a lot we can do out there. So, Mr. Hota, I know there is always so much to learn from you. And there's almost so much of incisive information you give to us and thought-provoking thought. I want to thank you for coming, sharing your time with us for 1 full hour, extremely useful. And if I may, take an indulgence, we would love to have you once again. So we would like to invite you at some point of time. And once again, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for everything.